This is the Music History In-Depth podcast for August 7th through the 13th. On this week's show, we celebrate the birthdays of the Rickenbacker Frying Pan, the merry-go-round, mainstream finding gangsta rap, and the passing of two iconic entertainers. These two icons of the 20th century passed away on August 8th, exactly 5 years apart from each other. First, Glen Campbell was born on April 22, 1936 in Billstown, Arkansas. He got a guitar at the age of 4 as a gift from his uncle, who was in a band and who taught him how to play. The family money issues were such that he had to go get jobs at an early age in order to help the family make ends meet. At the age of 17, he decided that a normal job wasn't for him, so he joined his uncle's band and then formed his own band called the Western Wranglers. In 1960, the siren call of Hollywood, California came calling, and he moved there to become a session musician. He also worked at a publishing house, writing songs for other artists. His session musician gigs picked up quickly as word got around about how good he really was on the guitar, and soon he was appearing on records by the Beach Boys, Dean Martin, Nat King Cole, Merle Haggard, and Frank Sinatra. He met Elvis Presley while working on Viva Las Vegas, and they became very good friends. And he was also one of the guitarists on the Beach Boys' legendary Pet Sounds album. Glen got a solo record contract in 1961 and released his first album, which did okay, but not spectacular. The next year, he released an album with Capitol Records. Over the next few years, he would release a few more albums that did, let's say, poor to moderate. During this time, Glen also started working on the television music variety shows Star Route, Shindig, and Hollywood Jamboree. When Glen's string of low-selling albums and singles continued, Capitol Records considered dropping him but decided to give him one last chance. In 1966, he hooked up with producer Al DeLory, which proved to be the missing piece to his puzzle, and soon a string of hits would follow. Glen had a hit with a cover of Buffy St. Marie's song Universal Soldier, and then had hits like Gentle on My Mind, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, I Want to Live, and Wichita Lineman. He also ended up with 4 Grammy Awards for his efforts. His song from the John Wayne movie True Grit got him 2 Academy Award nominations. From the late 1960s to the 1970s, Glen Campbell was everywhere. He had a TV variety show, had hits like Rhinestone Cowboy and Southern Nights, and did television appearances and acting gigs. He also had a celebrity marriage to country music singer Tanya Tucker, which ended with the usual accusations that come from high-profile celebrity breakups. In 2010, Glen found out that he was in the beginning stages of Alzheimer's disease. It was announced in 2011. Glen then embarked on what would be his final tour and recording sessions. The material from those sessions wouldn't be released until 2017 as the album Adios. One of his final performances was at the Grammy Awards that year, and that was a show where Kim Kardashian took a lot of heat for seemingly not caring about one of Glen's final performances, as she was looking at her cell phone as the audience was giving him a standing ovation. Serious lack of respect. The album Adios was released on June 9, 2017. On August 8, 2017, Glen passed away from the effects of Alzheimer's. Tributes poured in from across the music community. The biggest tributes came from great guitar players who considered Glen to be one of the greatest guitarists of all time. The death of entertainer extraordinaire Mr. Glen Campbell from Alzheimer's disease on August 8, 2017. 5 years after Glen Campbell, in 2022, this legend passed away. Olivia Newton-John was born in England on September 26, 1948, but moved to Australia when she was young. Her lineage is rather impressive. One of her grandfathers fled Hitler's Germany and won the Nobel Prize in Physics. Her great-grandfather and great-great-grandfathers were both judges. Her father worked for England's MI5 spy agency and was one of the people who helped to apprehend Nazi Rudolf Hess in the war. Olivia's career started when she was 14, when she was in a girl group. It didn't last too long, but it did get her spots on television shows and connections, including meeting future friend and collaborator Pat Carroll. During one of those shows, Olivia won a trip to England to record. She didn't want to go because she had a boyfriend in Australia, but was eventually talked into it by her mother. Once she was in England, she didn't want to stay. She was lonely. She missed her boyfriend and tried to come back to Australia a few times, but her mother thwarted those plans, determined that her daughter try to see things through, and probably to also keep her away from her boyfriend. You know how moms can get sometimes. They're precious babies. It helped for a while that Pat Carroll moved to England on a work visa. Olivia worked with famed producer Don Kirshner for a time in a group called Tomorrow, but that group didn't gain much traction. In 1971, Olivia recorded her debut album, If Not For You. The title track was a big hit for her internationally, and while other songs on that album became big hits overseas, they weren't big in America. She broke through again in America, though, in 1973 with the song Let Me Be There, which went top 5 on 3 different Billboard charts, including the country charts. She was also nominated for and won the Grammy Award for Best Country Single by a female for the song. Olivia ended up representing England in the Eurovision Song Contest, but lost that year to ABBA's Waterloo. She did end up getting an album deal with EMI Records from it, which proved fortuitous. The album, If You Love Me, Let Me Know, had the title track go top 5 on the Hot 100 Singles chart and also the country chart. The next song, I Honestly Love You, also became a huge hit and won her 2 Grammy Awards, including Record of the Year. At this point, Olivia started to receive some backlash from the country music community, who didn't like the fact that someone who wasn't from America was finding success in their genre and winning their major awards on top of all of that. It got to the point where other artists like Dolly Parton's sister had to defend her. The backlash also led to her moving to America in order to record her next album, Have You Ever Been Mellow? The title track was a huge hit, as was the next single, Please Mr. Please. Her string of hits cooled off, but not for too long. During this period, she did her own television show, like virtually every other artist in the 70s, and then Hollywood came calling. Olivia starred in the movie version of the Broadway musical Grease. Fun fact for you, Carrie Fisher of Star Wars fame was up for the role of Sandy. Star Wars pretty much killed that idea. Grease not only became a huge hit, but the soundtrack became one of the biggest selling soundtracks of all time. As far as Olivia's contributions to the soundtrack, she got 3 top 5 songs out of it. You're the One That I Want and Summer Nights, both with co-star John Travolta, and Hopelessly Devoted to You. As the 1980s rolled around, Olivia began to tire of her good girl image and decided to make it sexier and more mature. She starred in the movie Xanadu, which didn't do too well, but the soundtrack did very well, giving her the hits Xanadu, Magic, and Suddenly. She started out the decade with the mega successful and extremely controversial song Physical. The song was controversial because of the subject matter and heavy innuendo, which was okay for male rock artists, but not for female rock artists, I guess. The music video is also controversial because it had 2 men in it who were holding hands and looking at each other. Both the song and the music video were banned in certain places, and in spite of the bans, or maybe even because of them, the song became the biggest selling song of the 1980s. Another fun fact for you, the guitar solo on Physical was performed by Steve Lukather of the group Toto, who was on a ton of the songs from the 1970s and 80s that you probably don't even realize, along with having hits, of course, with his own group. Another attempt to change her image was during the release of her album Soul Kiss. On the back cover for that album, she put a photo of herself taken from behind with herself topless, wearing tight equestrian horse riding pants and holding a riding crop. For the 1980s, and especially for Olivia's fans, That was pretty spicy and controversial at that time. Her singing career cooled off again in the mid-1980s as other endeavors took over. She became an entrepreneur with her friend Pat Carroll, became a UNICEF spokesperson, a wildlife advocate, and a cancer spokesperson, having fought a battle with breast cancer. She acted occasionally, including on the TV show Glee, along with being a guest judge on RuPaul's Drag Race. She also had a #1 hit on Billboard's dance charts in 2015 with a dance version of the song Magic, this time as a duet with her daughter Chloe. This new version hit the top of the dance charts, giving Olivia a rarity of having a mother-daughter chart-topping song. Olivia passed away from cancer on August 8, 2022, after having it come back in 2017 when the breast cancer that she originally had 25 years earlier spread to her lower back. There have been many articles written about her that stated that the movie Grease made her a star. That's not even remotely close to being true. Olivia was already a star with a bunch of the hit songs and awards by that point. She was a huge star back in the early 1970s. Grease just made her a superstar, and then Physical took it to an even higher level. You can tell that the people who wrote those articles weren't over the age of 40. Otherwise, they would have known. Olivia Newton-John had 2 #1 albums, 5 #1 singles, countless other hits that didn't make it to #1, and 4 Grammy Award wins and also Country Music Awards. She sold over 100 million records worldwide, making her one of the biggest-selling artists of all time. The death of entertainer Olivia Newton-John from cancer on August 8, 2022. Before we continue, we'd like to tell you about the Music History Today podcast, where we go over the events that happened on that particular day in music history. The Music History Today podcast drops every single day, including weekends, on this podcast network. Now, back to the Music History In-Depth podcast. On to the birthdays, which aren't for people, they're actually for things. First, we are going to celebrate the awarding of United States Patent number 2089.171 for what was called then the Rickenbacker Frying Pan. The frying pan was invented by G.D. Beauchamp and Adolf Rickenbacker, who ran the Electro String Instrument Corporation. This patent took them almost 5 years to get. Part of the reason was that it had to be revised and edited a bunch of times so that they could prove that parts of their invention didn't infringe on other inventions. One part of their invention was to have a magnetic field be placed near a string. When the string vibrated, the field would pick up on the vibration and amplify it in some way, shape, or form. That came a little too close to sounding like the invention of the telephone, so they had to repeatedly show how it wasn't just a different version of a telephone. What they were really trying to do was to invent an instrument that would solve a problem. Way back when, the acoustic guitar had an issue. While it was good for quiet performances, it wasn't good when you put it with louder instruments like, say, a trumpet or a drum or something. The frying pan was going to change all of that. It was also going to make them rich. Filthy rich. After 5 years of wrangling with the United States government and after putting in revision after revision after revision, on August 10th, 1937, the Patent Office finally awarded them their patent. As luck would have it, though, other people would also come close to their ideas, making it cheaper and becoming rich off of their idea as well. Think the whole Apple iPhone, Samsung Galaxy phone legal argument. You kind of get the idea. The Rickenbacker Frying Pan would eventually become very influential, especially in rock and roll, where it would also get a name change to what you know it as today, the electric guitar, whose original patent was issued on August 10th, 1937 by the United States Patent Office. Politics and music intersect an awful lot. In fact, I've been thinking about doing a podcast where I give you the history of the times when politics, music, and controversy all came together. I like to try to keep politics out of this podcast because everything seems to be about politics these days to the point where life just gets stressful. For the record, I'm a moderate independent. Sometimes, though, politics cannot be kept out of this podcast. This would unfortunately be one of those times. Music is considered dangerous by a lot of the mainstream sometimes. It's nothing new. And for starters, when the waltz came out all those centuries ago, it was frowned upon and looked at as music and dancing that was considered scandalous and beneath the upper crust of society at large. Same thing happened when jazz came out, and especially when early rock and roll came out, with a racial angle thrown in just for good measure. When psychedelic rock and heavy metal came out, they were also looked at as dangerous. So the culture and racial war aspects are nothing new, even in this era of, well, whatever the hell is going on right now. I don't even know anymore. It's like bizarro world out there. Heavy metal especially has been blamed by parents and the media for virtually every sin known to mankind. Everyone from Judas Priest to Iron Maiden and beyond have felt the wrath. When rap music first burst onto the scene, it was considered dangerous as well, even though it really wasn't. 1979 song Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang was about as non-dangerous as you could get. The 1980s saw battle rapping, which still wasn't even dangerous. It was just two rappers going after each other on record. You had Run DMC, the Beastie Boys, and LL Cool J break through, but again, they weren't really considered dangerous per se. After all, Run DMC needed you to walk this way, the Beastie Boys fought for your right to party, and LL needed love. I need love. Anyway. What made rap dangerous in the media's eyes was the fact that at that time, rap music was still considered poor inner-city black people's music, to be blunt about it. Public Enemy started to get political in the mid-1980s and started to scare mainstream America, especially after Professor Griff's rant about Jewish people got out. But they were rare in that realm, due to mainstream America following quote-unquote safer artists like DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. That all changed on August 8th, 1988, when the rap group NWA came out with the album Straight Outta Compton, which had 3 hit songs on it: Straight Outta Compton, Express Yourself, and F the Police. And since I need to say that an awful lot for this particular segment, I'm not going to say what the F stands for. You can figure it out. You've heard the song. NWA consisted during their 2-album career of members Eazy-E, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, MC Ren, DJ Yella, Arabian Prince, the DOC, and DJ Speed. They were not clean-cut like Will Smith or extremely political like Public Enemy. They were in your face, talking about their lives as they lived them and saw it. Their talk about police brutality scared mainstream America, especially the song F the Police. The song wasn't so much about the fact that they were getting brutalized by the cops. It was that they were going to start fighting back. Dr. Dre, by the way, was not a fan of his own album. As Dre said in an interview in 1993, quote, "To this day, I can't stand that album. I threw that thing together in 6 weeks so that we could have something to sell out of the trunk. Back then, I thought the choruses were supposed to just be me scratching." End quote. Who else wasn't a fan of NWA or that song, aside from, obviously, the Police? Conservative politicians who used it as a culture war and racial issue. In fact, between 1987 and 1993 or so, rap music became enemies of the state, especially with the conservative politicians. The song F the Police came out during the 1988 presidential election campaign between George H.W. Bush and Michael Dukakis. At that time, the Bush campaign was already playing racial politics, thanks in no small part to Bush campaign strategist Lee Atwater, by putting out the now infamous Willie Horton political ad campaign about a black violent ex-con who was released under a weekend furlough program that existed under the governorship of Dukakis, who was at that point governor of Massachusetts. One weekend, Horton didn't return from his weekend furlough. Instead, he went to Maryland for some reason, where he did unspeakable things to a white couple. The ad was not made to look like the tragedy was just a single incident where race wasn't even the overriding factor. Nope, it was made to look like black men were going to do really bad things to white people, especially white women, your mothers and your daughters and your wives, and that Dukakis would be responsible for all of that, because if he did it in Massachusetts, then he was going to do it nationwide. That was basically the ad. Lee Atwater confessed to playing up the racial overtones in his autobiography before he ended up passing away in 1991 from cancer. I guess his mea culpa, as it were. Now that you have the racial powder keg that was the 1988 election, throw in the dynamite that was NWA's F the Police. Once that song came out, the Bush campaign pounced on it. Then vice presidential candidate Dan Quayle led the attack, repeatedly playing it up for all its racial glory while showing how much he and George H.W. Bush were both pro-police and would be tough on crime. They even tried to get both the song and the album banned, to no avail. For the record, Republicans also tried to turn the 1988 Sean Penn, Robert Duvall LAPD cop film Colors into a culture war issue for its portrayal of the Los Angeles gang scene at that time, even going so far as to try to get it banned from being shown in movie theaters, along with mothers groups chiming in at that time. Ironically, rapper Ice-T would find himself in the middle of a few culture war issues around that same time period. The first couple of times were when his own albums received parental advisory stickers being put on them so that major retailers wouldn't sell them, and then again because he sang the theme song to the movie Colors. For its part, the Bush campaign would try to play the same racial cards in 1992 during their re-election bid. This time with rapper Ice-T's side project, the heavy metal band Body Count, with the band's debut self-titled album and their song Cop Killer. Less than a decade later, ironically, Ice-T would start a 25 years and counting run playing a cop on the hit TV show Law & Order SVU. I always feel that I should do something after I say Law & Order SVU, like ka-kum, or whatever that sound is. Anyway, in 1992's presidential campaign, the racial music politics did not work, even though his challenger, Arkansas Governor William Jefferson Clinton, would also play musical racial politics as well, with a comment that was made by Sister Souljah of Public Enemy about killing white people, which, yeah, that not good. We actually discussed that whole episode in a podcast a few months ago. The problem this time for Bush was that even though he was riding high off the country's patriotic fever after the first Gulf War with 89% approval ratings, he was also working against a bad economy. And while Clinton did play racial politics with musicians, it was mainly a battle between older, greatest generation incumbent president versus a younger, yuppie, baby boomer politician who was at least a charismatic politician at the time. Trust me, Michael Dukakis was not even remotely close to being charismatic. Check out his answer in a 1988 debate when moderator Bernard Kalb of CNN asked him if he would support the death penalty in his home state if his own wife had bad things happen to her, and you will see just how uncharismatic Dukakis really was. While the question was offensive and meant for shock value, It was also meant to give Dukakis an opportunity to give an empathetic response, which he failed miserably at. It was also during this time period that the two live crew were getting arrested and banned for their album As Nasty As They Want to Be. So, just in case some of you thought that Donald Trump and other politicians these days were playing racial politics and it's all brand new and our country's never been more divided, blah, 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 blah. No, it's not new. It's been going on for generations, unfortunately. It just usually does not involve music these days, but it did back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and it certainly did in NWA's case. So, how would all of this actually play out for NWA? Well, along with national politicians, the police themselves tried to intimidate the group. On August 6, 1988, at a show in Detroit, Michigan, the police stopped the group's performance before they could perform F the Police. They took NWA off stage and escorted them back to their hotel without even filing charges. The reason why the cops broke the group's civil rights? Because the cops didn't want them to perform the song and then ended up riling up the crowd. Unfortunately for all those police and politicians, all the controversy made NWA more popular with black people who felt that they were the ones who were being personally attacked through NWA. And it also made NWA more popular with white kids because, of course, whatever your parents hated, your kids loved. Those who saw the movie Straight Outta Compton pretty much know what happened after that. The band went on to great success, followed by a seriously bad breakup. Dr. Dre and Ice Cube would go on to have extremely successful solo careers. Dre put out the landmark album, The Chronic, and would produce chart-topping albums for Eminem, Tupac, Snoop Dogg, and 50 Cent, while Ice Cube would have success with songs like It Was a Good Day, and becoming a successful businessman, along with having a successful acting career, including co-starring in the movie Boys in the Hood, and also he himself playing a cop in the 21 Jump Street movies. Unfortunately, while Eazy-E would have a couple of solo hits, he also ended up passing away early from complications of AIDS. The band would reunite for one night while accepting their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the subgenre of rap that they introduced, now called gangsta rap, would morph into the dominant form of hip-hop for the next 20 years or so. And it all started when NWA's iconic album Straight Outta Compton was released on August 8th, 1988. Next, we celebrate the birthday and coming out party for the merry-go-round, which catapulted a genre into one of the biggest forms of music worldwide, and it all started in the Boogie Down Bronx. On August 11th, 1973, there was a party held in the basement of 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in Bronx, New York, about a mile away from Yankee Stadium, give or take, about a mile and a half. It was to celebrate a girl's birthday. Like most kids who have parties, the first thing you want to do is to, of course, get your friends and family to help throw it, and this girl was no different. It just so happened that this girl got her brother to DJ her party. That brother, Clive Campbell, a.k.a. DJ Kool Herc, was born on April 16, 1955 in Kingston, Jamaica. He spent his first few years growing up in Jamaica, but then his family moved to the Bronx when he got a little older. As he went out to parties and was learning how to become a DJ, he noticed something about the way the DJs spun their records. They would do a call and response and talk over the records at certain points. He also noticed that people would come out to dance mainly during the parts of the songs when the drums kicked in, otherwise known as the drum break, in order to try out new moves. Kool Herc had an idea. What if he took the drum part of the song and made it longer? He worked on the idea with 2 turntables and a microphone, put the same record on both turntables so that while one was playing, he could use the other one to go back to the point of the song that he needed to get to, sometimes scratching the record in order to do it. He called his trick the merry-go-round. Finally, on August 11, 1973, at the age of 18, Herc brought his invention out into the open in front of his biggest crowd at the time, his sister's birthday party. He threw up 2 copies of a James Brown record onto the turntables. The crowd figured that he would just do a transition between the records. Instead, he did his merry-go-round trick. These days it's known as the breakbeat. The crowd went wild, and soon word spread about the new style and people began copying it, of course. Then some also started rapping over it, which began the rise of the MC. Soon the organic style of music, first known as rap and now known as hip-hop, took its first major steps. And it all started in the Bronx on August 11th, 1973, when the kid's brother, DJ Kool Herc, took 2 turntables and a microphone and helped to invent not only a new style of music, but also helped to change world music along with youth and street culture and make history while doing it. It has been banned. It has been ridiculed. It has been the subject of many, many racial attacks. It has incurred many a conservative's wrath. It has been legislated against. Some of its creators, like Public Enemy, 2 Live Crew, and NWA, who we just spoke about, have been declared enemies of the state and worse. And yet, through it all, and despite it all, the attempted cancellations, the cries of wokeness because of various culture wars over the decades, it has not only survived, but it's also thrived, much like the culture and especially the people who it came from. Happy birthday, hip-hop, and thank you, DJ Kool Herc. It couldn't have happened without you, quite literally. The birth of rap music and hip-hop culture at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx on August 11th, 1973, when Clive Campbell, a.k.a. DJ Kool Herc, took 2 turntables and a microphone and helped to invent history. And that is it for the Music History In-Depth podcast for August 7th through the 13th. Thank you very, very much for listening and or watching if you're on Spotify or YouTube.